I'm hoping to connect to as many people as possible and really inspire people with a vision of what a more just and inclusive Canada would look like. People were really hopeful, I think, in the last election, and they wanted to see a better Canada. And a lot of those hopes, people now feel betrayed. They feel like a lot of the things that they wanted to see happen didn't actually happen. And I'm hoping to inspire people that wanted to see that real, true implementation of some just principles. I want to bring that forward. Yeah, for example, pharmacare. I want people to be inspired by pharmacare, not because it happens to be a new democratic idea or because it's not a conservative idea. I want people to look at that idea of expanding our universal health care and saying, listen, we believe in taking care of our neighbors. And right now, there's our neighbors, elders, seniors, are cutting their medication in half, cutting their pills in half to stretch out their prescriptions. And that shouldn't be happening. We're one of the only nations in the world that has a universal health care that doesn't have a medical care or a pharmacy or pharmacare associated with it. I wanted to implement that, and I'm hoping that people, regardless of their political stripes, say, you know what, that makes sense. I think that's a great idea. I want to implement that. I think it's really important to acknowledge that I think everyone agrees that we need to take care of our environment. Everyone believes that we need to reduce emissions if we want to tackle climate change. Mm-hmm. And so people are on the same page. We just have to make sure that our policies don't target everyday working people and don't put too much of a burden on everyday people. We need to make sure that we have policies that actually people buy into. Everyone says, you know what, it makes sense for us to protect our environment. It makes sense for us to have an economy that's sustainable, and let's make the investments to continue good jobs and create more jobs and more opportunities, but also to protect the environment. With respect to policies, one of the things I've talked about is how hurtful it is to have policies that discriminate people based on the color of their skin. And we know that policing in the criminal justice system is probably one of the most pernicious forms of this, one of the most obvious forms of discrimination based on color, based on someone being Indigenous or not being Indigenous. So this is where I've proposed some policies. We can actually have a nation where we rid this practice of race-based discrimination in policing and in the criminal justice system. And if we have a national strategy around providing education with respect to the impact, the harm, the reality that we're on Indigenous land and how that's something that we don't talk about enough. I think we could have a national discourse around it and an education policy around providing that lens that people could then understand that this is the direct impact of decisions that have been made over subsequent centuries and decades that have resulted in the current situation.